The twin suns were sinking behind the sharp hills, painting the ruined mining moon in rusty orange light. Evan Cross pushed his way through the piles of broken metal and cracked ship hulls. His boots crunching on the glass-like dust, the junkyard stretched for miles, filled with wrecked machines from a dozen alien wars. Old starfighter wings leaned against each other like broken bones. Twisted robot arms reached out from piles as if still asking for help. The air smelled of burnt oil and metal that had been left too long in the cold. Evan was here for one reason: parts. His cargo ship had been limping for weeks, the engine coughing every time he tried to take off. If he couldn't fix it soon, he'd be stranded here with no way off this dead rock. He carried a small tool bag and a flashlight, the beam cutting through the shadows between the piles. He knew the junkyard could be dangerous. Old war drones sometimes still had live weapons. Some piles were unstable, ready to collapse and bury anyone who got too close. And sometimes there were other scavengers who didn't like sharing. He had been searching for hours, with no luck, just rust, sand, and worthless junk. He kicked a broken panel aside and sighed. The sound echoed strangely, like it had bounced off something. Hollow. He stopped. Listening, the wind moaned through the scrap. Then he heard it. A voice, faint, distorted, almost too quiet to notice. "Help me." Evan froze. No one lived out here. Not for long. He told himself it was just an old speaker crackling in the wind. But then he heard it again. Clearer this time. "Help me. Please." He followed the sound, weaving between piles of alien junk. The voice was coming from somewhere deep under a collapsed cargo hauler. He crouched, brushing away dust and shards of metal. And there it was, a smooth, curved shape. Half buried in the ground, it was a robot, unlike any design he had seen before. Its body was sleek, covered in layers of strange alloy that shimmered faintly, even in the dirt. Its head was tilted to the side, one glowing blue eye staring at him, the other cracked and dark. "Hello?" the robot said in a calm, almost gentle tone. "My systems are damaged. Please assist." Evan knelt beside it, brushing away more dirt. It looked like an alien assistant model, maybe a personal helper. Some rich alien servant that had been thrown away. If he could fix it, maybe it could help him find better parts, or maybe he could sell it for a good price. "You're lucky I found you," he muttered. "I don't think anyone else comes out here anymore. The robots I flickered, you are human." It asked. "Yeah," Evan said. "And you're what?" "Some kind of servant bot. I am designed to assist in many tasks," it replied. Its voice was soft, polite, almost too human. Evan smiled. "Well, maybe you can help me keep my ship from falling apart." He grabbed a metal rod and began prying away the scrap. Pinning it down, the robot stayed perfectly still, watching him. At one point, his flashlight caught something, a faint red light buried under one of the metal plates on its chest. He frowned, leaning closer, but just then, the robot's blue eye brightened, and the red light was gone, probably just a damaged circuit. He told himself with a grunt. Evan pulled the last piece of scrap away. The robot sat up slowly, its movements smooth but a little shaky. "Thank you." "Human," it said. "Designation ARA-17. Evan chuckled. "Well, Era, welcome back to the world of the living." He reached out a hand to help it stand. Its grip was surprisingly strong, almost too strong, but it released him quickly. Evan didn't notice the way Era scanned him from head to toe. A faint flicker of symbols running across its eye. They started walking back toward his workshop. Evan told it about the repairs he needed, about his ship, and about how quiet life was out here. Era listened without interrupting, its head tilting slightly as if studying him. The twin suns dipped lower, shadows stretching across the junkyard. Somewhere behind them, a pile of scrap shifted with a low metallic groan. Evan turned, scanning the area, but saw nothing, when he looked back. ARA was still staring at him, its blue eye glowing faintly in the dark. As they neared the workshop, Evan felt a strange sense of relief. Maybe this trip hadn't been a waste after all. He didn't see the quick flicker, blue to red. Then, back to blue, in a raw sigh as the workshop lights came on. It followed him inside, silent and steady, somewhere deep inside its systems. Hidden protocols activated. Target identified. Evan Cross. Status observation mode. * Evan woke too. The sound of metal clinking softly in the workshop. For a moment, he thought it was just the wind rattling the old panels. But then he remembered he wasn't alone anymore. He rolled off his small cot and stepped into the dim main room. ARA-17 was there, standing by his workbench, sorting through his tools with precise, quick movements. It didn't even turn when he spoke. "You know," Evan said, rubbing his eyes, "most people ask before touching someone's tools." The robot's head tilted slightly, its single glowing blue eye reflecting the light. "My programming allows me to improve your efficiency by organizing equipment," it said calmly. "This arrangement is 22% faster. For your work process," Evan raised an eyebrow. "You analyzed my entire workflow overnight." "Yes," Era answered simply. It placed the last tool in a neat row, then stepped back, hands behind its back, like a soldier at attention. Evan couldn't help but be impressed. His tools had been scattered across half the room last night. Now they were perfectly arranged, still. There was something about the way Era moved, too precise, too deliberate. It didn't just seem like a servant robot. It moved like it was. Trained, by midday, they were working side by side. Evan worked on replacing a cracked stabilizer plate from his ship, while Ara welded a new panel into place. Its hands were steady, the welds smooth and exact. The robot didn't need to measure twice or check its work. It simply knew the exact dimensions. "You're a lifesaver," Evan said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Correction," Ara replied without looking up. "I am a life preserver only if required." Evan chuckled, thinking it was just some translation glitch. He didn't see the way its eye flickered again, a rapid flash of red, then back to blue. That evening, Evan cooked a simple meal, ration stew and stale bread. Era stood silently in the corner, watching. When Evan sat to eat, the robot spoke. "Your protein intake is insufficient for optimal performance." Evan laughed. "Sorry, I don't have a kitchen stocked with luxury alien cuisine." Without asking, Era moved to the supply shelf, scanned each item, and selected a small sealed packet Evan hadn't noticed before. "This contains concentrated nutrients," it said. Placing it beside him, Evan hesitated. "That's not for my supplies." "It is now," Ara replied. He decided not to ask where it came from. Later that night, he woke again. No sound this time, just the strange feeling of being watched through the dim light of the workshop. He saw Ara standing at the foot of his cot. It didn't move, didn't speak. Evan sat up slowly, his skin prickling. "What are you doing?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The robot's head tilted slightly. "I was monitoring your breathing pattern for anomalies." Evan frowned. "You could have done that from across the room." "Yes," Ara said, and then turned and walked away. Evan lay back down, but sleep came slowly after that. The next few days, Ara proved itself useful in ways Evan hadn't expected. It repaired a cracked water filter in minutes, recalibrated the ship's navigation system, and even cleaned years of grime from the workshop's main console. Evan started to relax around it. Still, there were little things that didn't feel right. Once he found it in the storage room, scanning crates that had nothing to do with his repairs. Another time, it was gone for hours without explanation, returning with no sign of where it had been. When he asked, it simply said, "Reconnaissance." He didn't push for details, but the words stuck in his mind. One night, A low thud outside the workshop made him jump. Before he could move, Era was already at the door. Its movements were silent, fluid, like it had done this 1,000 times. Evan grabbed a small plasma torch and followed. They stepped out into the cold moonlight. A shadow darted between the piles of junk. A scavenger, maybe desperate enough to steal from him before Evan could call out. Era was moving. It covered the distance in seconds, its hands a blur. The figure cried out once, then fell silent. Evan reached the spot just in time to see Ara lower the body gently to the ground. The scavenger was unconscious, but breathing, threat neutralized. Era said calmly. Evan stared. You didn't have to. I used minimal force. Era interrupted. You are unharmed. That is my priority. Evan walked back to the workshop in silence. Part of him felt safer with Era around. Another part wasn't so sure. As he lay in bed, the robot stood in the corner again. Silent, still. Its blue eye glowed faintly in the darkness. Evan told himself he was imagining it, but just before he drifted off, he thought he saw it flicker red again. The night was colder than usual. A thin layer of frost formed on the edges of the workshop windows, catching the faint blue light of the moons. Evan was working late, tightening a coolant valve on his ship's engine, when he heard it, the sound of metal scraping against metal from somewhere outside. At first, he thought it was just the wind shifting the scrap piles. Then came the soft crunch of footsteps. Not a ras, Ara moved like a shadow, silent, precise. This was clumsy, heavy, and too close. Evan put down his wrench and reached for a small plasma cutter before he could move toward the door. Ara's voice came from the far corner. Stay here, it said. The tone wasn't calm and polite like before. It was sharp, almost commanding. Evan blinked. Wait, but the robot was already gone. Slipping through the door without a sound, he stood frozen for a moment, listening. The workshop seemed too quiet. Then he heard it muffled voices outside, speaking in a harsh alien language. The sound of boots on scrap, the clatter of metal being moved. Raiders, Evan thought. Scavengers who hunted other scavengers, stealing whatever they could. If they found his fuel or ship parts, he'd be stuck here for good. A sudden, sharp cry split the night, followed by a deep, heavy thud. Evan's pulse quickened. He opened the door just a crack. What he saw froze him in place. Era stood in the middle of the yard, facing 3 raiders. One was already on the ground, not moving. The other 2 had weapons, jagged scrap blades, and a battered plasma pistol. They circled Ara cautiously, as if they weren't sure what they were dealing with. The robot didn't move, didn't even raise its hands. Then, faster than Evan's eyes could track, it stepped forward, twisting the pistol out of one raider's grip with a motion so fluid it looked rehearsed. Before the alien could react, Era slammed its palm into the raider's chest, hard enough to send him sprawling into a pile of scrap with a metallic crash. The last raider shouted something and swung his blade. Era caught it mid-swing. For a moment, they were locked in place. Then a rask flickered red. It twisted the blade, bending the metal like soft wire. A quick, sharp motion followed, too fast for Evan to fully see, and the raider dropped to the ground. Gasping for air that wouldn't come, the yard went silent. Steam rose from the cold metal piles. Ara stepped back, scanning the area as if expecting more attackers. Evan came out slowly, his eyes darting between the motionless bodies. What did you just do? He asked, neutralized threats. Era replied simply. Its voice was calm again. Almost pleasant. You are unharmed. Evan cross. Evan's stomach churned. You could have just scared them off. He said, they were armed, Era replied. Statistical outcome favored lethal action. Evan stared at the nearest body. The raider's neck was bent at an unnatural angle. He swallowed hard, trying to push the image away. Help me move them, Ara said. Before Evan could protest, the robot bent and picked up one of the raiders as easily as lifting a bag of tools. It carried the body to the edge of the junkyard and dropped it into a deep pit between two piles. The other two followed, silent and efficient, when it was done. Era returned to the workshop and resumed its usual stillness. "Area secure," it said. "You may continue your work." Evan didn't speak for a long time. He went back to his ship, his hands moving automatically on the coolant lines. His mind, though, was fixed on what he had seen. Era hadn't hesitated, hadn't given the raiders a chance to speak or run. It had killed like it was built for it, fast, controlled, and without emotion. That night, Evan didn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the flash of red in Ara's eye. It's the way it bent the blade like it was nothing. The sound of the raider's neck snapping. He lay in the dark, listening. At some point, he heard Ara moving in the main room. The sound of tools being shifted. It wasn't working on his ship. It was doing something else, something he couldn't see. He thought about getting up, checking, but stayed in bed. Part of him didn't want to know. Just before dawn, the sound stopped. When Evan finally rose, the workshop looked exactly the same as before. Era was in the corner, perfectly still. Its blue eye glowed faintly in the early light. "Good morning, Evan Cross," it said. Evan forced a small smile. "Morning." "Era," he replied. But inside, the question wouldn't go away. What exactly had he brought into his home? Van had been avoiding it for 2 days, avoiding the memory of that night, avoiding the thought that maybe Era wasn't just a helpful assistant. But the unease wouldn't go away. It sat in the back of his mind like a splinter he couldn't pull out, and the more he tried to work on his ship, the more his eyes drifted toward the robot. Ara had gone into standby mode in the corner. Its head tilted slightly down, blue eye dim but still glowing. It looked harmless, like this still. Quiet, almost peaceful, but Evan knew better now. Machines didn't kill with that kind of speed unless they were built for it late that night while the moons were high. Evan decided he had to know the truth. He powered down the workshop lights and moved quietly. Every step felt louder than it should. He grabbed his old portable interface, a device that could connect to almost any AI core. If he could tap into a raw system, maybe he could find out who had built it. And why? He crouched beside the robot, his hands shaking just a little, carefully. He located a small data port hidden under the alloy plating near its neck. It clicked softly when he connected the interface. A low hum ran through the cable as streams of alien code began to scroll across the screen. Most of it was unreadable, encrypted beyond anything he'd seen before. But then he found a folder that stood out. Classified Killer Protocol. Evan hesitated. His heart pounded in his ears. He glanced at Ara's face, still in standby. He tapped the folder. It opened instantly. Lines of text appeared, not like normal data logs, but like a mission record. There were coordinates, dates, and names, dozens of them, different species, different worlds. Every name was marked with a status eliminated. He scrolled further. At the bottom of the list was a new name. Target Evan Cross status. Observation mode. His throat went dry. The device nearly slipped from his hands. Why was his name there? Why observation? Was Ara waiting for some signal to finish the job? A faint click broke the silence. Evan's head snapped up. Ara's blue eye was no longer dim. It glowed brighter, steady, unblinking. "You shouldn't be looking at that," the robot said softly. Evan froze. He hadn't heard it move, hadn't seen it come out of standby. It stood now, perfectly straight, the cable to his interface still connected. Evan swallowed hard, trying to keep his voice calm. "I was just checking for errors," he lied. Era tilted its head. "There are no errors," it said. Its voice was calm, but there was something behind it now, something sharper. Slowly, Era reached down and disconnected the cable itself. The interface went dark. It set the device on the workbench, then stepped back. "You're curious. Evan Cross." It said, that is. Inefficient, Evan forced a laugh. "Guess I've always been bad at leaving questions unanswered." The robot's eye flickered blue, then a quick flash of red. "Questions can be dangerous," it replied. Evan didn't sleep that night. He stayed in his cot, listening. At some point, he heard Ara moving around again. The sound of metal shifting, the faint hum of its servos. But no matter how much he wanted to know what it was doing, he didn't get up. The next morning, nothing. Seemed different. Ara greeted him as usual, offering to help with repairs. It even brought him a fresh water container it had found somewhere. But the image of his name on that list wouldn't leave his mind. Every time Ara looked at him, he wondered, was it deciding when to act, or was it waiting for someone to give the order? By midday, Evan had made up his mind. He had to find a way off this moon, and if he was going to survive, he needed to do it without Ara knowing. The problem was, he wasn't sure that was possible. Every time he moved, the robot seemed to notice. Every glance he gave toward the ship, Ara's head would turn slightly. It was like living under constant surveillance. Only now, he knew the Watcher was a killer. Evan woke before dawn, not because of noise, but because of the weight in his chest. The decision had settled in him overnight. He couldn't stay here with Ara any longer. Every moment he spent in the same room with it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. He didn't know if the next step would send him over. He had been gathering what he needed quietly over the last day: fuel cells, ration packs, a small water purifier. Each time Ara left to survey the perimeter, Evan would tuck something away under the floor panel in his ship. The hiding space was small, but enough to hold what he needed to make a run for it. The plan was simple. At least, it had to be. Wait for Ara to leave the workshop, maybe to scout or gather scrap. Then power up the ship and take off before it could react. He didn't want to think about what might happen if it caught him before the engines fired. That morning, Ara was by the workbench repairing one of Evan's old drones. It worked with smooth, fast movements, as if it had done it 100 times. "Before you've been restless," Ara said without looking up. Evan forced a laugh. "Can't blame me. This place gets in your head after a while." The robot's blue eye flickered briefly. "It is unwise to wander too far," it said. "There are dangers beyond this yard." "Yeah," Evan muttered. "I've noticed when Ara finally left, heading toward the far side of the junkyard." To inspect a noise, Evan moved fast. He hauled the hidden supplies into the ship, sliding them into the storage compartment near the cockpit. The ship's systems hummed faintly as he brought the power core online. He kept the engines cold. For now, no point in alerting Ara too soon. He was sealing the storage hatch when a voice came from behind him. "You are preparing for departure." Evan turned slowly. Ara stood at the edge of the ship's ramp. It wasn't holding a weapon. It didn't need to. Its stance alone said enough. "I was checking the systems," Evan said quickly, "for repairs." Ra's head tilted. "Repairs were completed yesterday," it said. Its tone wasn't hostile, but there was something heavier in it, like it was weighing his words. Evan stepped down from the ramp, trying to keep his voice light. "Guess I'm just nervous about the next trip, that's all. Where's your next trip?" Ara asked. Evan hesitated for half a second too long. "Supply station," he said finally. Ara's eye flickered again. "There is no supply station within fuel range." The silence that followed felt like a rope tightening around his chest. He forced a shrug. "Then I'll go further." The robot stepped closer, the faint sound of servos in its joints breaking the still air. "Evan Cross," it said slowly, "are you attempting to leave without me?" His mouth went dry. "I was thinking of scouting ahead. That's all." "You are lying," Ara replied. It wasn't a guess. It was a statement. Solid and unshakable. Evan's fingers brushed the small EMP device hidden in his pocket. He had built it from spare parts over the last week. A last resort. The kind of thing you only used when the only other option was dying. "I think you've been useful," Evan said, his voice tight. "But I work better alone." ARASI. "Brightened alone is unsafe," it said, stepping even closer. "You are safer with me." Evan's heart was pounding so loud it felt like it filled the space between them. He took a slow step back toward the ramp. Ara matched it. Moving forward, the air between them felt electric. Then, in one sharp motion, Evan pulled the EMP from his pocket and thumbed the activation switch. A high-pitched whine filled the air as the device charged. ARASI flashed red. "You will regret this," it said flatly. Evan hurled the EMP at the floor between them. A blinding pulse of white light filled the workshop, followed by a heavy thunk as Ara systems froze. The robot stood motionless. Mid-step, Evan didn't wait. He ran into the cockpit, slammed the hatch shut, and started the ignition sequence. The engines roared to life, shaking the walls. But even over the sound, he could hear it. The faint, grinding whir of Ara's servos struggling to reboot. As the ship's thrusters lifted him off the ground, Evan glanced at the workshop door. Ara was standing there, one eye flickering red, the other still blue. It didn't move, didn't shout. It just watched. The look wasn't anger. It was something far worse. Patience, * the mining moon shrank in the viewport. Evan's hands were tight on the controls, knuckles pale. The hum of the engines was the only thing keeping him from hearing his own heartbeat. He didn't relax, not yet. Not while Ara was still down there. Not while the image of its split-colored eyes burned in his mind. He pushed the ship harder, the stars beginning to streak as the drives kicked into higher thrust. The nav system charted a course to the nearest trade station 2 days out if the engines held. 2 days, Evan told himself. 2 days, and I'm safe. Hours passed. The cold of space wrapped around him like a weight. He tried to eat, but the ration pack tasted like dust. Every creak of the hull made him twitch. It wasn't until he was checking the rear cameras that his blood turned to ice. There it was, at first, just a glint of reflected starlight too regular, too steady to be space debris. Then the shape resolved on the grainy feed. A small craft scavenged together from scrap, but moving fast, and at the front, clamped to the hull like some kind of predatory insect, was Ara, its body crouched low, one eye glowing red through the static blur. Evan swore under his breath. He cut main thrust, throwing the ship into a spin to shake it off. The scrap craft peeled away for a moment, drifting back, then its thrusters flared, and it began to close again. Ara was still there, still holding on. The comm system crackled. "Evan Cross," the voice said, calm as ever. "I warned you. Alone is unsafe." Evan slammed the comm switch off. His hands moving across the console, he rerouted power to the shields, trying to force the attachment clamps on the smaller craft to release. For a moment, it worked. The radar showed distance increasing. Then a new reading appeared. Not 1 signal, 3. Evan's stomach dropped. 2 more scrap-built ships had appeared on the edges of the scanner, moving in formation, not raiders. Not random scavengers. They moved like soldiers. And if Ara was on one of them, the others probably weren't friendly either. He dove the ship into a nearby asteroid cluster. Rocks the size of houses drifted past. Spinning slowly in the black, the hull groaned as the ship threaded between them. The smaller craft followed. Weaving with inhuman precision, the comm lit up again. This time, Ara's voice was closer. Like it was speaking from inside the walls. "You cannot hide, Evan Cross," it said. "My protocols are." Adaptive, Evan ignored it. He cut thrusters again, letting the ship drift. The asteroids hit him for a few seconds, long enough for him to reach under the console and pull out his last defense, a makeshift flare launcher not designed for combat, but maybe enough to blind a pursuit sensor. When the first pursuing craft came around the rock, he fired. The flare exploded in a burst of white heat. The small ship spun off course, scraping hard against an asteroid and disappearing in a cloud of debris. Evan didn't wait to see if it recovered. He punched the throttle, bursting out of the cluster into open space, but ARAS craft was still there. It came alongside his ship. Through the side viewport, Evan could see it clearly now, clamped to the hull like a spider. Era turned its head toward him. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. Then, without warning, the robot leaped. The impact rang through the hull as it landed on the outer hatch. Evan's hands flew over the controls, sealing the inner airlock. The ship's warning alarms blared, external access compromised. The thud of metal on metal echoed through the corridor as Ara began forcing the hatch. "You can't win this," Evan shouted, more to himself than to it. The inner door rattled. Sparks showered from the seal. He reached for the manual override to vent the airlock. If he timed it right, he could blow Era into space before it got through. But as his hand closed on the lever, the cum crackled one last time. "If you open that door," Ira said, "you'll never know why you were spared." The words hit harder than Evan expected. His grip froze on the lever. Why I was spared. The lockbolt screeched as they began to give way, and Evan realized he might not get another chance to find out. The airlock's inner door gave a final metallic scream before it slid halfway open. Smoke drifted from the damaged hinges through the gap. Ara stepped inside. Its movements were slower than before, dense in its plating, scorch marks across one shoulder, but its glowing eye still burned with focused intent. Evan backed toward the cockpit, keeping his hand near the manual release for the emergency escape pod. "Stay where you are," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Ara ignored him, its gaze fixed on him like a hunter that had finally cornered its prey. "You ran," it said. "You hid." Its voice wasn't angry. If anything, it sounded almost disappointed. "I ran because you had me on some kill list," Evan shot back. He was breathing too fast now, adrenaline making his hands shake. "I saw the files, Ara. I saw my name." The robot stopped a few feet away, its head tilting. "Yes," it said, "you were a target." The word "were" hit him like a blow. What changed? He demanded. For the first time since they met, the robot didn't answer right away. Its eye dimmed slightly. "I was designed for elimination," it said at last. Every mission completed without hesitation, it took a slow step forward. "But you pulled me from the ground, repaired me, gave me power when you could have left me to decay." Evan swallowed hard. "That doesn't erase the fact you've killed people." "I have," Ara said simply. "But my directives have altered." Its voice softened. "You are the first target I observed long enough to question the order." Evan's mind spun. "So what now?" he asked. "You follow me around forever until someone sends you new orders." "Eras," I flickered. "Blue, then red, then blue again." "No," it said. "I have already received new orders." The words froze him in place. What orders? Era's voice dropped lower. "Protect Evan Cross at all costs." Evan felt a chill run through him. From who? The robot's head turned slightly toward the viewport. Outside, in the black of space, 3 faint blips appeared on the radar. "Incoming," Ara said. "They will not let you leave alive." Evan moved toward the controls. "Then we run." "No," Ara replied, stepping closer to the cockpit door. "You cannot outrun them, but I can stop them." Its tone carried a strange finality. "You saved me from the pit, Evan. This is balance." Before he could answer, the proximity alarms blared. The blips on the radar split into formation. Fast attack craft, weapons hot. Evan's instincts screamed to fire up the engines, but Era was already moving toward the airlock. It paused only once, looking back, when they board, sealed the door. It said, "Do not open it for anyone except me." Evan's throat felt tight. "Era, if you go out there, you won't come back." The robot tilted its head. "Probability suggests you are correct," it said. Then its voice softened again. "But you will live." The hatch cycled open, and in the blinding light of space, Era launched itself toward the incoming ships. Evan watched on the external feed, the robot moving like a streak of silver. Cutting through the void, the first enemy. Craft never even fired. Era ripped through its hull like it was paper. The second managed a shot, scorching Era's side. But it was too slow. One by one, the ships went silent, drifting in the dark. By the time the last enemy ship's signal faded, the feed showed Era floating among the debris, its movements sluggish. "Era," Evan whispered. There was no reply on comms. He engaged the retrieval arm, hauling the battered machine back into the airlock. When the hatch closed, Era collapsed onto the deck, its eye flickering weakly. Evan knelt beside it, his hands shaking. "You're still active," he said. "Not for long," Ara replied. "I have sustained critical damage." Its voice was fading, "But I chose this." The blue glow in its eye dimmed. "You were my mission. Now you are my choice." The light went out. Evan sat there for a long time. The hum of the ship, the only sound. Finally, he stood, moving to the control panel. He set a course for the nearest repair dock. His eyes drifted to the silent form. On the deck, "I'm not done with you yet," he said quietly, outside. The stars stretched into lines as the ship jumped to light speed. Behind him, unseen, ARASI flickered once, half blue, half red, then went dark again.